the golden goose laying them eggs, looking after it.
Don't take any risks.
Thing is, with Anthony Joshua, he's Olympic gold medalist, and in the UK he's a massive star. He sells out stadiums, 70,000, 90,000.
Yeah. Huge star.
Huge star.
The reason I say it's a win-win for Jake Paul is because, listen, if he wins, then he's beating a former heavyweight boxing world champion, certainly one of the best heavyweights of his generation, and of course, a man that is way bigger than Jake Paul. Of course, it's a win. And if he loses, it's still a win for Jake Paul because he had the balls. He was man enough. He was willing to test himself. He would prove everyone wrong, all his critics.
I mean, it's come out of the blue, but it's intriguing. And I think from Jake's perspective, I think, he's had a lot of criticism about he is a pro boxer now. The way you want to look at it, trains as a
Joe Rogan and Tyson Fury break down the idea of Anthony Joshua fighting Jake Paul, and both immediately question Joshua's motives. They argue that Joshua and his management seem more focused on a massive payday than on serious competition. Fury insists that if Joshua truly wants real challenges, he should be facing fighters like himself or Deontay Wilder, true heavyweights. Choosing Jake Paul, in their eyes, looks like a business decision, not a competitive one.
His management team, I'd say, stay away from Fury, stay away from Wilder, and we'll just fight the rest of the people and keep making plenty of money. Why do we need to fight?
Michael Bisping reacts to the matchup from a strategic angle. For Jake Paul, he says, there is almost no downside at all. Bisping explains that Jake has positioned himself perfectly. If he somehow beats Joshua even by sheer luck, he would instantly earn the credibility many fans say he lacks. Defeating a former unified heavyweight champion would be historic. But even if Jake loses, Bisping believes it still boosts his reputation because he dared to step in with a world-class heavyweight. It paints Jake as brave, ambitious, and willing to challenge someone far beyond his level. According to Bisping, all the pressure is on Joshua. Anything less than total domination would make people doubt Joshua's seriousness as a top-tier headliner.
And he would potentially prove all of those critics wrong. Well, yeah, he would, maybe, unless there's some funny business, right? And for Anthony Joshua, as I said, this is kind of a lose-lose, right? Because if he wins, people are still going to say, well, you only beat Jake Paul, right? The man that lost to Tommy Fury, after all, right? That's the only loss in his record, Tommy Fury. You're telling me that Tommy Fury is going to beat him, and then Anthony Joshua's not going to beat him? So if he beats him, he gets no credit. And if he loses, then holy can you imagine? That would be the biggest downfall of any boxer's career. The reality is, he's not going to lose. There is no way on this earth that Jake Paul can beat Anthony Joshua in a boxing match. That's just a fact, okay? Look at what he did to Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou hits as hard as a Ford Escort, going 100 miles an hour or whatever that stat was. Comes from the UFC. He was the UFC heavyweight champion of the world. Has a good go against Tyson Fury, but goes up against Anthony Joshua and gets flatlined. Every single punch that was thrown was landed, and every punch that landed put Francis Ngannou down, okay? So to stand there and think that Jake Paul, who's much, much smaller, who has way less experience, that doesn't weigh anything near him, is going to have a chance, and not to mention the technical abilities. Let's just talk about that. Not to mention the technical abilities or experience. We're talking about an Olympic gold medalist, remember, from back in the day, who's then gone on to become a true British boxing icon, or a worldwide boxing icon, let's be honest, right? There's no way.
Joe Rogan emphasizes Joshua's pedigree, an Olympic gold medalist and one of the most devastating punchers of this generation. Rogan says Joshua wouldn't just enter the ring to win, he'd enter to send a message. In his view, Joshua would try to make Jake Paul rethink ever calling out heavyweight champions again. For Joshua, this wouldn't be a fight, it would be a statement.
If he beat Anthony Joshua, good Lord. Good Lord. I mean, that's a big if. Right?
I mean,
Anthony Joshua,
I do not think.
Olympic gold
Yes.
medalist, former heavyweight champion of the world. What he did to Francis Ngannou,
I
like,
know.
good Lord.
Yes.
Do you want that smoke?
Yeah, I just think it's all about the promotion or whatever. I have no idea what the actual motivation is for. That fight's not competitive at all.
Well, it's a dangerous fight.
Yeah.
Because Joshua's going to try to make an example out of him,
Yes.
for sure.
And will.
And will. I mean, Anthony
I know.
Joshua's one of the biggest one-punch KO artists ever.
Yes.
I mean, he's a one-punch.
Frank Warren takes a more skeptical stance. He says the entire discussion appeared out of nowhere and all signs point to Jake Paul being the one pushing hard for the fight. Warren argues that Jake is tired of critics accusing him of fighting smaller, older, or non-boxers. Facing Joshua would silence all of that instantly. Warren notes that almost no promoter expected such a proposal, especially coming from Jake's side. To him, the fight sounds like a stunt, but it also shows that Jake seems determined to prove he wants a real heavyweight test.
Do me to start with. I mean, it come out of the blue, but it's intriguing. And I think from Jake's perspective, I think, he's had a lot of criticism about he is a pro boxer now. The way you want to look at it, he trains as a pro, but, and he's fighting as a pro. They said it's about time he fought some. I've seen some of the stuff, that's been said. When's he going to fight someone? Well, he's gone from one extreme to the other. That's what he's doing. So if that fight happens, you've got to take your hat off to him.
He got called out by Andre Ward, AJ. Would you rather see Jake fight AJ, which is obviously, as we know, a mismatch, or Andre Ward, who's been retired for, 4 years?
I'd much rather see AJ fight Tyson.
Oh, please. I dread to think how many times
we don't know
you've
that's
done
going to
this.
happen because the big man, he's filming, he's not...
Ben Davidson's view is far harsher. He compares the idea to Francis Ngannou's loss to Joshua and reminds fans how quickly Joshua dismantled him. Ngannou, far bigger, stronger, and a natural heavyweight, couldn't handle Joshua's power. Davidson says this exposes the massive gap between elite heavyweights and crossover fighters. If a powerhouse like Ngannou couldn't stay upright, he believes there's no realistic conversation to be had about Jake Paul. His point isn't to insult Jake, it's to highlight how absurd the matchup looks when viewed through real heavyweight standards.
Francis Ngannou is one of the most durable men on the planet, and look at what happened there. I don't think he's good for boxing, if I'm honest.
I was about to ask, obviously, if we were to see him fight, AJ would be a heavy favourite with, I'd imagine, 99.9999% of the sport. How quickly would you expect to see Anthony Joshua get the job done against Jake Paul?
He could go in and do what he wanted. He could play with him if he wanted to.
Spencer Oliver approaches things from a different perspective. He believes there's symbolic value in the idea. Oliver says that if Joshua accepted the fight, it could resemble what Muhammad Ali once did, taking unconventional matches that pulled in huge audiences beyond traditional boxing fans. He argues that this event could open new marketing doors and attract millions of younger viewers who follow influencers more than boxers. Even if the competitive gap is wide, the spectacle itself creates global attention. Oliver believes Joshua could expand his star power and evolve with the entertainment-driven direction of modern boxing.
In the face, boxed out of 150 million quid. No one will remember the fact he fought Jake Paul. They'll remember the fact he knocked Klitschko out in Wembley in 2017.
Totally agree with that.
So I'm kind of, whilst I don't like it, and I don't like the way that Jake Paul gravitates to these brilliant athletes and like a moth sucks the life out of them because he gets a benefit of association, because I think they deserve all the association. But he is a and there was opportunity there.
Listen, commercially, of course it works because it will be huge and there'll be a load of money on the table. For Anthony Joshua, it's like sort of, he's going to get rewarded very well with no risk, minimal risk, no risk at all. He's going to go in there and he may then put all this stuff to bed with Jake Paul and calling out all these different champions, etc., etc. So, of course it works. And when you're talking about, the credibility that Joshua's going to get, he's not going to get none now, but are people going to remember that? Of course they're not. Like, when he goes on to do what he does, didn't Muhammad Ali have some sort of strange fight in the middle of his career? Didn't he box? Yeah, he did. He boxed some non-boxing guy and whatnot. Like, people don't remember that. That's what I'm saying. Look, us as boxers, we don't remember stuff like that.
It was replicated in Rocky. So, he did a version of fighting.
Joseph Parker, however, disagrees completely. He says Joshua should stay focused on real heavyweight competition if he wants to maintain his status in the sport. Parker argues that fighting influencers does nothing for Joshua's legacy and that true contenders, not entertainers, are the only opponents that keep him relevant.
Jake Paul's doing whatever Jake Paul does. If Joshua's serious about wanting to stay in boxing and fight good, real fights, if that's what you want to do. I mean, if you want to go down this other road and do this, then that's by all means do it. But it's a different journey and it's a different pathway. I think as fighters who've been in the game for a long time, I want real fights. If I was given the opportunity to fight Jake Paul, would I take it? No.
Chael Sonnen isn't convinced the fight is even real. He warns that the public is jumping ahead without any formal confirmation. Sonnen stresses that Joshua has spent nearly 2 decades building a reputation of professionalism, discipline, and dignity. To him, the idea that Joshua would throw all of that aside to fight Jake Paul feels suspicious. Sonnen says many fans would lose respect for Joshua if he accepted such a spectacle. And until promoters or the fighters themselves announce actual negotiations, Sonnen considers this entire storyline nothing more than a rumor that's gotten out of control.
And I had reached out to Jake directly. But he didn't get back to me. I did get a response, but it was like, you know the response where somebody's like buying some time, or they just want to acknowledge, like they give you a receipt. I'm in receipt of your text message. They can give you an emoji or something like this, or sometimes there's even the automatic. I'm trying to remember what I got, but you can get like the automatic, I'll call you later. You know those? So even though I had said, hey, I'm looking for a confirmation of this fight, and he did respond, as I reflect back on that, it's like, well, he didn't respond confirming the fight. So who did confirm the fight? So I went to Helwani, and Helwani thought that it was confirmed, but he was a little lighter in the language than what I thought I remember hearing. And there's a number of boxing guys just saying, hey, that's not going to happen. And they had a few details, one of which was being Florida. And the Florida Commission would probably be open to something like this, particularly under the clause of exhibition, and then we'd all have to kind of hear, well, what are those rules and what are those stipulations? But that's reasonable to work with. But we haven't been able to get a confirmation from the Florida Commission, and now we're actually getting boxing guys on the inner circle. We're hearing from some British guys, from some fellow comrades to Joshua that said he wouldn't do that fight. He just wouldn't do that fight. That people would lose respect for him. That he has carried British boxing. This was one guy talking, but the guy said that Joshua has carried British boxing for 2 decades. And that while carrying British boxing on his back, if he was to go over and do a spoof fight against a YouTuber, now I don't look at Jake Paul that way. I look at him as a badass. I understand how greatly he is outmatched. I understand the lack of experience in comparison to Joshua. Believe me, I get it. But I don't dismiss him as a YouTuber, right? Look at him as a guy that went to the distance with Tommy Fury, not for nothing. So, when I'm listening to this,
Simon Jordan is even more blunt. He calls the matchup a stupid fight, completely detached from the standards of real boxing. Jordan acknowledges the enormous money involved, possibly one of the biggest paydays of Joshua's career, but says boxing should be more than a financial circus. He argues that using YouTubers as opponents cheapens the sport and insults the athletes who dedicate their lives to reaching Joshua's level. For Jordan, the fight isn't just unbalanced, it devalues the meaning of elite boxing.
What does it tell us, Simon? Does it tell us more, as I said in the introduction, about the falling star of AJ or the rising one of Jake Paul?
It tells you that there's a huge opportunity for enormous amounts of money to be generated around a fight that really has no integrity behind it in terms of as a fight, but in terms as a media spectacle and entertainment opportunity. You've got a very talented YouTuber that's built himself into a massive influence with a huge following, and you've got a former 2-time champion of the world that operates at a very high level of engagement. Whether he's a high level of performer anymore is a different discussion. So it becomes about how much can this fight generate, how many eyes on the prize. I mean, I spoke to his very close friend, Michael Jarman, about this very fight about 3 or 4 months ago, and he was like, oh, what do you think? I said, what difference does it make? Oh, it would potentially jeopardise his legacy. His legacy's sealed. You cannot undo the fact, whatever you think of Anthony Joshua.
It might damage it.
I don't think so. What it will do is increase his bank balance. But I think in the great, I mean, it didn't damage Muhammad Ali's reputation to go in with a sumo wrestler, did it?
No, but after, when Joshua was at his peak, Simon, if I had said to you there and then, do you know what? Maybe in December 2025, Anthony Joshua will fight a YouTuber.
This is the entertainment business, and Anthony Joshua is an entertainer, and you can't undo the fact that he won the world heavyweight championship twice.
and he fought in some great fights.
So why does he need this?
Because he's in the business of entertainment. And if an opportunity is presented to him and someone wants to say that we can monetize this to the huge levels that are potentially available, why wouldn't you? It's a walk in the park.
You see, you're not having
Tony Bellew adds his voice to the skepticism. He refuses to believe the fight will happen until both men are standing in the ring. Bellew says boxing must protect its credibility, and this matchup doesn't make sense. He explains that fans underestimate how difficult it is to finalize a fight of this scale. Contracts, sponsors, broadcasters, governing bodies, none of them are likely to support a bout that looks more like a circus act than a legitimate sporting contest. To Bellew, this entire idea may never progress beyond an online rumor.
£1 million. When you see it unfold, what's your thoughts?
I don't believe a single thing until literally I see them in a ring together. He was supposed to fight Gervonta Davis, wasn't he? He was 5 stone lighter and is 5 stone lighter and 8 inches shorter. So I don't believe anything. Until they're in a ring together, I don't believe nothing.
Obviously AJ was meant to fight in an 8-rounder. I think Eddie said to me earlier against...
In an 8-rounder?
Yeah,
okay.
Against a top 120 opponent on BoxRec that none of us would have heard of. Okay. Just a kind of confidence, go and get a knockout type victory. I suppose you can go and do that against Jake Paul and earn an absolute fortune from
Listen, I've said before and I'll say it again. Boxing is a brutal, brutal business. Go and make as much as you can, as quick as you can. Once you've achieved your dream and goals of becoming a world champion, there's nothing left to do besides make money. What are you chasing? You've won all the belts. You know, I think he's missing a WBC, I think that's about it. Go and get the belts and that's it. Move on.
Do you believe it should be sanctioned?
What I believe doesn't matter.
No, but I'm just curious.
What I believe doesn't matter because some governing body will.
Of course.
Or some sanctioning body will. Some organisation. Yeah, absolute maniacs. But you know, that's another argument. That's another cause. It's like the one I heard Chris Eubank Senior talking about on the radio the other day. He's talking about safety of fighters. Champ, you were the worst for it. You went up to cruiserweight when you were super middleweight and didn't do it once but twice.
That's it for today's video. Stay tuned for more updates.